They say Atlanta blooms best in spring. Soft breeze sliding past porches, sunlight dancing on brick, magnolias shaking off the dust of winter. But that morning, nothing bloomed in me. I sat by the kitchen window, pruning a dying basil plant like it held answers. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No gospel hum on the radio, no calls, no nothing. Just me and this damn basil. A recipe book sat open beside me. My mama's handwriting fading between greasy fingerprints and old sweet tea stains. I flipped the page to banana pudding, but I couldn't focus. Marvin's name buzzed in my chest like an old injury when rain was near. You raise a child with both hands and both prayers. And then one day, he tells you not to come. The phone lit up, humming against the counter like it knew I wouldn't answer right away. Marvin's name, again. My hand hovered. Then I tapped it open. The screen blurred for a moment, my eyes adjusting, or maybe my heart resisting. His text was short. Just confirming again, don't come. Shanice really feels it'll just be better. That wasn't the first time I heard it. It was last Tuesday. I was folding towels when the phone rang. I picked it up with a smile, already imagining what color suit he picked for the wedding. Mama, he said, soft, I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. I thought I misheard him. I cleared my throat. Say what now? He hesitated. I could hear his breath in the silence. Shanice says she don't really vibe with you. I stood still, towel in hand, like if I moved, it'd all be real. My voice shook, but I kept it steady. I don't vibe with cold grits, Marvin, but I still eat. He didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just listened as my own son tiptoed around my dignity like it was broken glass. You know I love you, Mama. But it's her day too. That's when I said it. I didn't raise no fool, but I did raise a coward. He went quiet. Then, he hung up. Now here I was, a week later, watching his name flicker across my phone again, confirming my exile like I was a virus. I set the phone down and walked away. The house held memories in its walls, every chipped paint, every uneven tile. I remember scrubbing this place clean after my shifts. I was a nurse. I worked doubles, triples if they had 'em. I gave up sleep, skipped meals, lived on coffee and gospel, and the hope that Marvin would have it easier. He did. That boy went to Morehouse, graduated on stage with honors, called me his hero in front of the whole damn crowd. I still hear it sometimes. I wouldn't be here without my mama. So what changed? When did being a hero turn into being a burden? I sat on the edge of my bed that night, in the dark, the fan spinning slow above me. Marvin's voice echoed in my head. Not the man's voice from now, but the little boy who used to say, "Don't worry, Mama, I'll buy you a big house one day." I don't want no big house. I wanted to see my baby get married. That's it. The next morning, Miss Geraldine from across the street waved as I checked the mail. You must be excited. Wedding's this weekend, right? I smiled so wide I swear my lips cracked. Yup, excited? She clapped her hands together. Tell Marvin I said congratulations. I nodded and went back inside before the tears betrayed me. You know how we do in the South. Everybody knows everybody's business except the truth. I could have told her. Told the whole block. But I didn't want pity. I didn't want folks whispering behind their hands, "Poor Miss Bell, her own son don't want her there." No, silence would have to do. Until I saw the Facebook post, I was scrolling to check church announcements and stumbled on it. Bridal shower. Shanice and her friends, holding mimosas, laughing like they didn't step on a legacy. The caption read, "Can't wait to marry my love. Just us and our new family, new family." I stared at those words so long the screen dimmed. The hurt wasn't loud. It was soft, like someone pressing on a bruise over and over. I closed the laptop slow, like if I moved too fast, I'd break. Later that night, I stood in the kitchen, lights low, wind teasing the curtain. I opened the closet and pulled out a box I hadn't touched in years. Marvin's baby things. Inside, booties, old hospital bracelet, his first tooth, and at the bottom, the sonogram photo. Black and white, grainy, beautiful. I held it like it was armor. I may be uninvited, but I ain't invisible. And I meant that. You gon' remember who I am. The morning was gray and damp, like it couldn't make up its mind. I pulled on my sweater and stepped out onto the porch. The clouds hung low over Atlanta, like they had something heavy to say. I didn't feel like cooking, so I figured I'd walk down to the corner store, grab some bread, and maybe a can of soup. Something about walking made things quieter in my head. As I passed the Johnsons' yard, I caught myself thinking about Marvin again. When he was little, he'd walk ahead of me and then run back just to hold my hand. He ain't done that in years. Truth is, he started changing the moment he moved in with Shanice. Used to call every Sunday, like clockwork. Now, I'm lucky to get a text once a week, and even that feel more like a memo than a message. He used to ask me what I thought about things, what to do about work, about savings, about his car when it made that strange sound. Now he calls to correct me. Tells me how I should have phrased something, or that I read too much into things. It ain't advice he's looking for now, it's distance. And lately, he's been calling me by my first name. Tenny. Like I'm some woman from the DMV, not the one who carried him through sickness and sacrifice. When your child talks to you like a stranger, you start mourning while you're still breathing. One night, I asked him straight up why he'd been so distant, and he said, not even looking me in the eye, "Shanice says you come on too strong, that you make people uncomfortable." I sat there blinking. "You mean like speaking my mind?" He shrugged like it wasn't worth unpacking. I thought about my mother, how she raised me with truth that didn't always come wrapped in ribbons. We didn't do gentle, but we did honest. And I brought Marvin up the same. Never lied to him, never coddled him, kept a roof over his head and prayers under his pillow. Nowadays, they call that trauma. Back then, we called it protection. We didn't have therapists. We had porches, and uncles who pulled you aside, and grandmothers who looked you dead in your eye and said, "That boy ain't right." I guess I was too much truth and not enough sugar. I was just doing what I thought was right, raising a man who could face the world. But now I'm the problem, the too emotional one. Funny how that works. It was a few weeks ago when Marvin casually mentioned Shanice took his daddy out to lunch. I just nodded, but it burned. See, his daddy left when Marvin was still in diapers. Came around every few birthdays with a toy and a smile. But that man got invited to lunch. Me, I never even got asked. They always got time for the ones who vanished, but never the ones who stayed. I didn't say nothing to Marvin. I just folded the laundry and smiled. But inside, I was crumbling. I didn't want to be called dramatic. Didn't want to hear, "See, this is what I mean, Mama." So I stayed quiet. Again. But being quiet to keep the peace feels a lot like agreeing with your own dismissal. Last Thursday at choir rehearsal, Sister Lena pulled me aside. She leaned in close, like what she had to say might sting. "Tenny," she said soft. "I seen her at the mall. That girl of Marvin's. She walked right by me like she ain't seen me." I raised my eyebrows, but Lena wasn't done. She was with another girl, laughing, talking about someone wearing a church hat and acting all old school and pressed. I ain't say nothing, but I felt a chill. I chuckled out loud, but it didn't reach my chest. Inside, something cracked. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that maybe I'd taken things too personal, but Lena don't lie. And suddenly, it wasn't just me being sensitive, it was real. I wasn't being paranoid, I was just finally paying attention. I walked home from church that evening a little slower. My legs felt heavy, like I was carrying the weight of every unsaid word. Sitting on my porch later, I watched a young couple stroll by with a baby stroller. They laughed, easy and free, like nothing had ever broken them. And I wondered, would I even get to meet Marvin's kids? When he was 8, he used to say, "When I grow up, you'll live with me, Mama. I'll take care of you." Back then, he meant it. But they promise you the world at 8. By 28, they act like you the burden. I thought about calling someone, maybe my cousin Raylene or sister June. But what could they say? What comfort's left when the cut is clean but keeps bleeding? Later that night, I came inside and walked past the hallway shelf where a framed picture of Marvin and me at his graduation sat. I stopped. In the photo, he had his arm around me, big smile, cap tilted to the side. I looked proud. I was proud. But now, that picture didn't feel like joy. It felt like a lie. I picked it up, stared at it for a while, then slowly turned it face down. If he don't see me, maybe I need to stop staring at what used to be. I walked into church that Sunday afternoon feeling like I carried half the weight of the world. The seats were full. The air smelled of lilies and worn hymnals. I sat in a pew toward the back, hoping grace would find me, even if my pride wouldn't. Up front, I spotted Shanice 3 rows ahead, sitting beside Marvin's father's new wife. Neither turned to look. My chest tightened. Sister Ruth, 2 seats over, leaned toward me. "She's seen you, baby," she whispered, voice low. "Ain't no way she missed you walk in." I nodded, but didn't breathe relief. What Ruth said felt like confirmation of something I already feared. I recalled a church bake sale 2 years ago when Shanice, in her glossy dress, whispered loud enough for others to hear. "That cornbread tastes like something from Grandma's box, old folks and their flavor." Marvin laughed, not a discreet chuckle, a full laugh. I held my smile so hard my teeth ached. I told myself, don't show it. If they see it hurts, they'll do it again. Later in my kitchen, I cooked butter beans. The stovetop hissed, steam curling upward. I spoke to Mama, though she's gone. Did I do something wrong raising him? I stirred the pot slowly. I remembered Marvin's middle school fight when someone called me ghetto. He'd defended me fiercely then. Now, he chuckles when Shanice mocks my ways. The kitchen, always my comfort, felt small. The shadows seemed to judge me more than comfort me. Out on the porch, I moved a broom slowly, sweeping dust off the steps. My phone was on speaker. Marvin's voice floated. "Man, I'm always cleaning up after her drama." Casual. Untouched by guilt. The tone, dismissive, not angry, cut deeper than a shout. My breath caught, not from rage, but recognition. When your child starts talking about you like a burden, you realize your place in their story changed without notice. I stepped inside quietly and made my way to the living room. I opened a box under my bed, old keepsakes, his kindergarten drawing, first lost tooth, that homemade card that read, "You're my hero." I didn't cry. Instead, I folded the card carefully and placed it back. I whispered to myself, "Love don't disappear. It just hides behind memory until memory stops knocking." I thought of how dignity and loyalty once held us together. Now, they seem old fashions. We walked so they could run, and now they act like we crawled in the way. Later that evening, Marvin texted quietly, "Hope you're good, Ma." I stared at those words. I didn't reply. Not because I lacked love, but because replying would betray my hope. So I kept silence. Didn't punish him. Just gave myself space. Sometimes silence says more than any apology never sent. My fingers hovered over my purse, my shoes at the door. I steadied myself. The air outside was warmer now. A faint breeze coaxed the curtain in the window. I whispered into nothing. It's time somebody heard my side. I locked the door behind me and stepped out. I went to that little Monday evening potluck at the church hall like it was just another day, wore my maroon skirt, the one with the stitching that made me feel held together. Folks were chatting, scooping potato salad onto paper plates, catching up about grandkids and gout. I was just glad to be anywhere that didn't remind me of silence. But something felt off the moment I walked in. Heads turned just a little too quick. Smiles didn't stretch past their eyes. I caught Sister Kendra glancing between her phone and me. She finally came over, hesitant. "Miss Tenney," she said, "I didn't think you'd see this, but I thought you should." She turned her phone toward me. There it was, a meme. My silhouette at the last church potluck. The caption, "When you show up and nobody asked you to bring your mouth." I let out the smallest chuckle, just enough to let folks think I was good sport. "That's something, huh?" I said, nodding like I wasn't blinking back fire. I smiled so wide my jaw hurt. They made me the punchline, and I preached last Sunday. When I got home, I checked my phone out of habit. The group chat, the one for the choir, the church events, the birthdays, was gone. I wasn't in it. I tapped the search bar. Nothing. Gone like I was never there. I sent a quick message to Sister Ruth, then another to Deacon Fred. No reply. Just gray check marks. The pictures kept flowing. Potluck snapshots, praise team rehearsals. a Tuesday prayer breakfast, all without me. They moved ahead like I never sat beside them for 20 years of Sundays. I stared at the screen, didn't cry, just sat in the quiet with my phone resting heavy on my palm. I told myself, don't give them the story they want. Don't let overreacting be their excuse. But inside, something was shifting. The next evening, I ended up at the community fundraiser downtown. Didn't plan it, just felt like being where noise lived. That's where I saw Mars. She stood near the refreshment table, laughing with a group of women who never once called me by my name. She saw me, didn't flinch. "Oh, I wouldn't dare send that meme to you," she said loud enough for folks to hear. I stepped closer, keeping my tone calm. "Which meme, dear?" Mars didn't miss a beat. "You wouldn't understand from this side." I tilted my head. I understand enough to see when people use laughter as a weapon. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes blinked too long. She turned back to her circle, and I walked away, but I knew that seed I planted would itch. Later that night, Lucy came by. She's been with our family for years, through funerals, broken pipes, and Thanksgiving stress. We sat in my kitchen with cups of mint tea. She took a breath and said, "Miss Tenny, it was Oneda. She the one edited that meme. She's the one pushed for your removal from the group." I stared at her. "You sure?" Lucy nodded. "She bold now, 'cause she countin' on your silence." I didn't answer right away, just sipped my tea. Then I said, "Then silence won't protect me, but truth might." The house was dark when she left. I sat in the living room, lights off, only the glow of my phone. I stared at the meme I'd saved, my own son's people laughing at my back. And him? Marvin once said I was too much, too intense. "Always making things about you, Ma." I let the phone rest on my thigh. My hand trembled a little. I pulled out an old spiral notebook. On the first clean page, I wrote, "They will hear me." I stood, walked toward the front window, looked out into the night like I was trying to find the next step. Somewhere out there, folks were still laughing. But I was done being the shadow in their joke. My phone buzzed. One message. "You weren't on the invite list anyway." I stared at it for a long time. Then I glanced at the picture of Marvin on the shelf, him in that graduation cap, arms wrapped around my neck. I turned the frame down slowly. Then I whispered, "No more being the punchline." The night felt charged, like the air itself was waiting. I sat upright in bed, the glow from my phone casting long shadows across the sheets. My fingers trembled as I opened the anonymous email. Inside, a seating chart for the wedding. My name relegated to optional guest, tucked behind the kitchen door. Beside it, a plaque image credited Shanice as the donor for the venue. Money I'd quietly paid for. My heart hammered. I pressed my hand to my chest, whispering, "They used my sacrifice as their stage." I grabbed my journal from the nightstand, thumbed its pages, and wrote in firm letters, "Truth is my witness." The room was silent, save for the hum of the air vent. I closed the journal, folded myself under the covers, and stared at the ceiling until sleep refused me. I awoke early, haunted by what I saw. My mind went back years, when I mortgaged the house so Marvin could attend college and to help Shanice's small business in its first months. Promises were made. "We won't forget," they told me. I watched those promises fade into echoes. It dawned on me. My silence had become their permission. I said softly, "I thought love meant erasing my name. Now, I see, it's erasing me." I sat in the cool kitchen, staring out the window, remembering how I gave so much without demand, only now realizing they treated my gifts as disappearing acts. Later that afternoon, Lucy called. Her voice was tense on the other end. "Tenny," she said, "they're increasing the wedding budget thanks to funds from your old savings. But do you see who's taking credit?" My throat tightened. Lucy didn't sugarcoat. "You can't keep swallowing this. They think you're too proud to speak." I breathed deeply. Then I said, "Then let them think wrong." We set a time and place, a small diner in the South Side, for me to face them. That evening, I arrived at the diner with a folder in hand. The air inside smelled like strong coffee and vinyl seats. Mars greeted me from a corner table, Oneta at her side. I sat, folded my hands, and said, "I saw the seating chart. I saw the plaque." They paused. Mars's face shifted. She murmured about misunderstanding, but I leaned forward, my voice even. "Understand this. My silence is not your permission." Oneta's lips clipped shut. I continued, "I will not fund or attend anything built on my erasure." My words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. There was power in measuring each one. They stared. The air between us crackled. I left the diner under a dusky sky. The church steps nearby were empty in twilight. I sank onto them, the folder heavy in my lap. My thoughts drifted. "I have been invisible in rooms I built." A line from something I once read played in my mind. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I pulled my shawl tighter, deciding then that passive hope had lost its place. At home later, the silence felt different. It felt loaded. Marvin's message arrived. "Mom, don't make a scene. It's too late to change things now." I didn't flinch. I closed my eyes, exhaled hard, then typed back, "It's never too late to change me." My finger hovered over send, then pressed. I set the phone aside and reached for the folder labeled Wedding Receipts. I laid it open on my desk. Every check, every canceled loan, every note, all evidence of a history they tried to erase. I sat alone on the couch that afternoon, still in my house robe, TV on mute, staring at the phone screen. Somebody had shared a clip from the wedding. Not to me, of course. But things find their way when they need to. The camera panned to Marvin and Shanice at the reception mic, both glowing in front of white roses and chandelier lights. He raised his glass, smiled, said, "To our family, our friends, and everyone who's lifted us up along the way, especially those who made this possible." I waited. And waited. My name never came. He moved on. Shanice beamed. They toasted. The crowd cheered. I muted it. Sat there breathing in the quiet. Same quiet I used to tell myself was peace. But now I know better. When someone you raised erases you in public, it's a wound dressed in silence. And silence ain't sterile. It's infected. It lingers. I leaned back, eyes closed, letting the ache settle. That evening, I heard a knock. I didn't expect company. Lucy stood there, jacket zipped high, envelope in hand. "I shouldn't be bringing this now," she said, stepping inside. "But I can't sit on it no more." She handed me a sealed envelope. My own handwriting. I knew it instantly. She looked guilty. "I was told to hold it back," she said. "They said it wasn't the right time. But Tenny, they never meant to give it at all." My fingers opened it slow. Inside were two things. A letter I wrote to Marvin and Shanice months ago, asking them to simply acknowledge the sacrifices, and copies of receipts. The letter was soft, full of grace, maybe too much grace. I'd forgotten I even wrote it, but it was never delivered. Lucy stood in the kitchen, watching. "You gave them everything," she said. "But they buried your voice like it was a burden." I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I folded the letter, set it beside me, and said, "They thought keeping me quiet would keep things neat. Let's see how neat it stays now." When she left, I pulled out my records, old bank slips, wiring transfers, photos from Marvin's graduation. I spread them across the table like puzzle pieces, and as I moved them around, the shape of truth came clear. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. I opened my phone, went to the wedding video post. Underneath it, I typed, "Thank you to those who remember me. The rest will be corrected." I didn't press post, not yet, but I saved the draft. I booked a meeting room downtown the next morning. Quiet, unassuming. Mars and Oneta showed up, heels clicking, perfume strong. They thought it was another lecture, maybe a guilt trip. I let them talk. Ordered black coffee. Opened the folder. "This letter," I said, sliding it across, "was supposed to be delivered. It wasn't." Mars shifted. Oneta's eyes narrowed. "I have documentation," I said. Everything from tuition to that venue down payment. Mars raised a hand to interject. I held up one finger. Let me finish. They both paused. I refuse to be your silent foundation while you build your new house, I said. I won't be erased, and I will not support what I'm not invited to stand in. Onetta leaned back, arms crossed. Mars's face flushed. Not guilt, just the heat of being caught. They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. After, I didn't drive straight home. I found myself sitting on the steps of the church, dusk settling in, wind carrying old dust down the sidewalk. My hands were folded in my lap. My mother used to say, "Be heard, even if your voice shakes." Mine had been shaking all week, but I still spoke. Looking up at the darkening sky, I said it aloud to nobody. Tonight, I'm no longer gentle. And I meant it. Later that night, I pulled into my driveway. House was dark, porch light flickering again. I left the engine running, checked my phone. Message from Marvin. We need to talk. Now. I stared at it a long time. I could have ignored it. Instead, I typed back. Meet me, 8 p.m., at the old diner. Then I pressed send. And for the first time in years, I felt calm. I arrived at the banquet hall carrying 2 pans, one with green beans, one with my sweet potato pie. The doors were ajar, lights warm inside, laughter drifting out. I walked in slow, head down, trying to breathe like nothing felt sharp. But eyes found me, lingered. A cousin of Marvin's leaned closer to his companion. Is she staff tonight? The hush behind that question struck deeper than a slap. I tucked my chin, placed the dishes on the side table, and said nothing. I came as mother. They made me staff. The posted menu for rehearsal dinner read, Shanice's sweet potato pie, family recipe. My dish next to the printed version, but nobody knew or said otherwise. Servers tasted bites, murmured praise. Great flavor for a new touch, one remarked, not knowing whose hands made the pie's soul. Every spice, every dash of cinnamon that came from my fingertips, they treated it like theirs. Pain snapped through me. Indignation flared in my veins. I stood, mouth parted, but forced myself to sit again. I'd learned long ago that chaos is better felt than shown. I slipped into the kitchen when voices rose in the hall. Mars was there, stirring a spoonful of pie, chatting with guests. I cleared my throat. That's my recipe. I taught you that pie. Her head turned, calm mask in place. Your recipe is the old way. This version fits the new brand, she said, tone cool. I answered without raising my voice. Don't rebrand me out of my home. She watched me, expression locked. The heat between us flared without a word. Tension crackled. I leaned against a counter as sweat cooled on my forehead. I thought of years past, teaching Marvin and Shanice how to fold batter, how the oven must coax flavor slowly. You always insisted on proper technique, Mama, Marvin once teased with a grin. I remember flour handprints on his cheek, laughter loud as summer thunder. They turned what we built into someone else's legacy. Back in the main room, I saw my pie served, but to people who'd never tasted it before, assuming the menu was correct. I stood near the stage, chest straight, silent yet present. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stood. In that posture, I felt something shift. I whispered in my mind, I bring more than dessert. I bring truth. I stepped away, but my posture didn't bow. It held weight. Later that night, I sat on my porch in quiet dark. The house was still. Crickets in the yard. My hands still smelled of sweet potato and spice. Mars's words haunted me. Shanice's menu haunted me. But I knew something was breaking. Their house wouldn't blaze without someone lighting the match. My fingers hovered over my phone when a notification popped. Guests love your pie. Would you like to give a speech? My heart pounded. I didn't answer immediately. I just stared into darkness and said, yes. I got there early. The air smelled of lilacs and fresh soil, spring trying its best to wrap the mess in something soft. I stood under the gazebo just outside the venue, watching guests smile and pose for pictures. Some greeted me politely, like I was a distant cousin they barely knew. I scanned the family tribute wall near the entrance, framed photos from every side of the family. Mine was missing. I walked up to a young woman arranging flowers nearby. "Excuse me, my photo was up yesterday. Did someone move it?" She blinked, then shrugged. "Oh, that was removed." No apology. No explanation. I turned away before my face could betray my heart. "You removed my face before I removed my soul," I muttered to myself. I walked quietly to the back row and found a seat behind two tall guests. Out of sight again. It was becoming a pattern. But I sat anyway, eyes forward, mapping the room, not out of fear, but out of strategy. The lights dimmed. A video started on the large screen, a family slideshow rolling across the room, old black and white photos of great-grandparents, Marvin in his cap and gown, Shanice hugging her sisters, Christmases, cookouts, reunions, but not one picture of me, not one. Some guests began whispering. I could feel eyes on me, some puzzled, some avoiding, some just trying to make sense of it. Marvin sat front row, head high, proud. Proud of what, I wondered? A history retold without its root. I didn't blink. I just held my purse tighter in my lap. The pain wasn't the surprise. It was the precision. They didn't forget me. They erased me. Deliberately. Thoroughly. I could feel it in my bones. The ceremony began. Flowers, music, applause. Then came the moment that should have been mine by nature, if not by title. Shanice turned toward Oneida and smiled. "Mom, the stage is yours." She said it clear. She said it loud. Oneida stood and walked to the microphone. The crowd clapped like it made perfect sense. I sat still. My hands trembled in my lap. Marvin looked toward me just for a second. Guilt flickered across his face, then gone. I leaned forward slightly, whispered only loud enough for myself to hear. "They paint you their mom so they can pretend I was never theirs." My voice didn't crack. It landed flat and sharp, like a penny tossed on stone. At intermission, while guests milled about, I stepped into the small garden behind the venue. Quiet. Still. I opened my folder, unfolded each letter, each photo, each check I'd written. Proof of a history no slideshow could delete. I walked over to the officiant, handed him the folder without a word of bitterness. "These belong in the record," I said. He hesitated, then nodded slowly and took them. I stepped back, my feet grounded. Not loud at all, but I didn't need volume. I had presence, and that presence started turning heads, whispers, shifts. Something was beginning. As guests returned to their seats, I lingered behind a hedge just near the stage. I could see everything. Shanice's gown, Marvin's eyes, the vows exchanged with trembling voices. I saw my son, the boy I birthed and raised, now promising his love with a voice that once cried for me in the night. I remembered the weight of him in my arms, the first time he said "Mama," the day he broke his arm and wouldn't let the nurse touch him unless I held his hand. I thought, I gave everything so you'd stand in love. Now, I must stand in truth. I stood up straighter, not out of protest, but out of peace. The kind that comes when you stop begging to be seen. Then the ceremony neared its end. The couple kissed. Cheers filled the room, confetti, laughter, flashbulbs. I stood from my seat in the back. I didn't say a word, I just walked forward. The crowd parted slightly, unsure what I would do. I didn't cry, I didn't speak, I stood. And in that stillness, something louder than shouting filled the room. The sun was out, no clouds to compete. My hands were deep in soil, working the roots of my hydrangeas. Same patch I'd nurtured every spring since Marvin was little enough to run through the sprinkler while I weeded. Birds chirped. The wind was kind. My back hurt, but not in the way it used to. Not in the way that came from holding in more than a body can carry. No, today it was honest work pain. The good kind. Miss Dolores from next door leaned over the fence. "I saw you on Facebook, girl. You stood like a queen." I chuckled soft, wiped my hands on my apron. Sometimes silence wins louder than shouting. Inside, my heart was still settling from the storm. I hadn't heard from Marvin, not a call, not a text. And oddly, I wasn't aching for one. Something in me had cracked open and released that need. The needing had passed. The woman in me now was not waiting for a son to return, but building a place she could stay, alone or not. Later that afternoon, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. I paused, peered through the curtain. It was him. No flowers, no gift bag, just him, standing still, like he didn't know if the door would open. I unlocked it slow, opened it halfway. "Mama," he said, voice low, "can I come in?" I stepped aside. "You can step in," I said, "but I won't tiptoe around truth." He nodded, stepped inside like he didn't quite belong anymore. Sat on the couch. I stayed standing. "I messed up," he started. I let her shape the story. I let fear, my fear, run the show. I let him speak. His hands fidgeted. He looked down mostly. "I thought you were too strong, too strict. But she feared you because you wouldn't bend to her version. She needed to control it all. And his voice broke. "I chose easy." He looked up, eyes red. "You didn't deserve to be erased." I nodded once. No child erases their roots without losing their branches too. We sat in quiet. "I'm not here for guilt," I said. "Forgiveness is a door you knock on. It don't swing open just 'cause you showed up." He nodded again, slow, heavy. "I want us to fix things. Maybe start over," he offered. I thought, maybe dinner next week? You, me, Shanice? I shook my head. "Healing ain't a show I perform on demand," I told him. His mouth tightened, not in anger, but hurt. "Let your new life settle," I said. "I'll be right here, growing, not waiting." We sat for a while, nothing left to force. "I'll call more," he mumbled. "Call yourself first," I said. "That's where the work starts." He stood to leave, looked like he wanted a hug, but didn't move. I didn't either. He nodded again, stepped out, closed the door gentle. That night, I pulled out my journal, wrote for a long time. My last sentence was simple. I showed up for me. I walked to the old photo box in the hallway, picked one of Marvin when he was 5, grinning, frosting all over his face from a birthday cake I'd baked from scratch. I framed it, set it right by the stove. Later, I saw a flyer pinned to my fridge. Church retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I took it down, stuck it in my purse. "New roots take time," I whispered, "but I'm learning to grow again." Just before sunset, I stepped onto my porch. Kids were playing tag down the block, yelling, laughing. My wind chimes clinked. I looked out at them, then out at the sky. My fingers clutched my shawl tighter. "I was a mother before he was my son," I said to the breeze, "and I remain one still." The wind caught my hair. I laughed, not bitter, just full.